Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Today is Monday, April 20th, 2026. We welcome you to the 2026-2027 budget deliberations of the Milford Board of Aldermen. Please join me as we salute our flag. Madam Secretary, would you please take the roll?
Alderman Ali.
Present.
Alderman Bannon.
Here.
Alderman Bevan.
Here.
Alderman Brennan. Alderman Casey. Alderman Federico.
Alderman Federico would like to be excused, Madam Secretary.
Thank you. Alderman Fowler. Here. Alderman Healy. Here. Alderman Height.
Here.
Alderman Lombardi.
Here.
Alderman Pacelli.
Here.
Alderman Michael Smith. Alderman Winthrop Smith Jr. Here. Alderman Winthrop Smith III.
Here.
Alderman Vitro.
Here.
11 are present.
11 present. We do have a quorum. Thank you, Madam Secretary. Is there a motion to come out of recess?
So moved. Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to come out of recess. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are out of recess. The first department on this evening's agenda is the Boys and Girls Club. Chief Executive Officer is Megan Altamere. Page 92. Good evening, Megan. Happy to have you here. You can present anytime you're comfortable starting.
Yeah? Can you hear me now? Yeah, okay. I want to start by saying that I totally understand the financial challenges that the city is facing, and I know these decisions are not easy. But I also wanted to take a moment to share what your investment in the Boys and Girls Club is making possible right here in Milford. The past year has been incredible. Every single day we're serving hundreds of kids, giving them a safe, positive, and structured place to go during the most critical hours of the day. And we're not just providing supervision, we are creating opportunity. We've expanded programming in exciting ways, from STEM-based AI programming to arts, learning leadership development, and new enrichment opportunities. Our kids are gaining real skills and real confidence. They're learning how to lead, how to problem solve, and how to see a bigger future for themselves. We've celebrated huge moments like our Youth of the Year, who represents everything the club stands for. We've run full summer programming that supports working families from morning to night. We've hosted events that bring the community together and shine a spotlight on the incredible things happening inside our walls. And behind all of that, we are constantly working to bring resources into Milford. Through fundraising, grants, partnerships, and events, we're doing everything we can to stretch every dollar and maximize impact. But the reality is, while we are growing and doing more than ever, costs are rising and families are struggling more than ever. This year alone, we provided over $185,000 in scholarships so that no child was turned away. That is something we are incredibly proud of, and it also shows just how much our families need us right now. We keep our prices as low as possible because accessibility is everything to us, but it's getting harder and harder to sustain that without additional support. At the end of the day, this is an investment in Milford's future. Your support helps our working families. You're keeping kids safe. You're helping build confident, capable young people who will grow up right here in this community. We're going to keep showing up. We're going to keep working hard, and we are going to keep doing everything we can to bring resources back into Milford. We're asking for your support so we can keep doing what this community needs us to do. Thank you for your time, your support, and everything you do for the Boys and Girls Club of Milford. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any board members have any questions for the Boys and Girls Club? Yes, Alderman Fowler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, thank you for the presentation. I just wanted to ask, you requested $150,000, but obviously the mayor and Board of Finance recommended $100,000. What would that extra $50,000 go to?
Our largest expense is by far our staffing expense, so the more money I have for staffing, the more kids I can serve at the end of the day. And our staffing costs just keep going up year over year because A, we're serving more kids, but minimum wage is increasing much faster than our membership dues are increasing.
So it's mostly related to staffing. Would it impact programming as well, or?
Well, program is directly related to the number of staff I have, so it would lessen the number of kids I can have and the less
Okay.
number of programs.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Smith III.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and through you. Good evening, Megan. How you doing?
Great.
I was just wondering if you were to have received all of the funding that you had requested, how many more kids could you have served?
We could probably serve about, I don't really want to, I'm estimating right now, probably between 30 and 50 more kids
With the funding you're not getting?
with the funding we're not getting per year.
Okay. I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Alderman Pacelli.
Hi, thank you for coming here tonight. And how many children are you currently facilitating assistance for?
Absolutely. So we serve over 1,400 kids per year, and we have about 400 kids per day.
That's great, thank you.
Yes.
Alderman Healy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you to Megan. When you talk about the $50,000 and potentially service to an additional 30 to 50 children, so where would those children receive services if it's not through your entity?
I don't know. I'm sorry.
So you're saying that the demand, is certainly there, and I know the Boys and Girls Club does an outstanding, job for the community, the greater, community in service, and the needs are there. And is there any other external funding sources that you rely on besides this budget?
Absolutely. We run many special events throughout the year. If anybody's interested, May 14th, I have an amazing gala going on, so you can, right on our website, you can learn more about that. We have a 5K event that we do. We have many special events that we run. I write grants, more grants than I could imagine. We do a lot of individual donations through partners and corporate donations.
So on an ongoing basis, the money you receive from the city, the funds that you get externally through other charitable events, through fundraising events, and through philanthropy will also help you on a rolling basis to assist every boy and girl that you possibly can.
Absolutely.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Any more questions for the Boys and Girls Club? Seeing none. Thank you, Megan. Thank you for the job you're doing for the city and all those kids.
Thank you.
Good job. Next department on the agenda is the Milford Police Department. Chief Keith Mello, page 43. Good evening, Chief.
Good evening.
You can start your presentation at any time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, everyone. I have with me our two deputy chiefs, Deputy Chief Wyger to my right and Deputy Chief Triplotti to my left. This is their first time here with us at a budget hearing. I'll be very brief. When you look at the budget, it's an increase of about 1.4 million. The vast majority of that is on the personnel side due to the increase in the regular wages and all the overtime accounts. The remainder of the budget, with some exceptions regarding some fixed costs on the software maintenance side, it is basically the same. And the reason that is we were able to eliminate some accounts or eliminate some funding for things like modems and connectivity and some equipment that were the result of the Axon contract. Before, we were doing it a la carte, so there's been some efficiencies there. I just wanted to point out, because I know we have some new members, and I wanted to point out, by design, there's some accounts on the personnel side that are underfunded, and we know that. Historically, the overtime account will likely be underfunded by about $300,000. The dedicated training account will likely be underfunded by $25,000, and the holiday account will likely be underfunded by $72,000. And there's some other areas as well. And the reason we do that by design is we know that we'll have some overages in the regular wage account due to openings that we'll have. And so, as I have for the last 20 years, there'll be an expectation that we'll transfer from that account to fund these accounts. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to take your questions.
I know the last time you were here, Chief, we were on the minus side of as far as how many police officers we have. How you doing as far as the manpower this year?
Sure. So, let me, if I could just frame this. With the wage increase, we've seen about 150% increase in the number of people that are applying here. And so that's a good sign. But just so you're all aware, it takes a few years from the date that we start to look for somebody, recruit somebody, till we put them through the process, the selection process, the background process, put them through the academy, before they ever get to take their first call. So, as I had mentioned last time I was here, I believe, that it would take about 2 years to get us where we needed to be. So right now we have 13, actually we did have 13, we lost one. We have 12 officers in our academy that are set to graduate on May 20th. At that point, they'll undergo a 10-week FTO. If they complete both those phases, or all three of those phases, they'll start their probationary period for 1 year. On top of that, we have 9 openings. We did lose a number of officers as a result of the contract because of the health care that changed. We knew that. We knew that we had to rip that Band-Aid off and kind of get past that. So again, this academy graduates May 20th. We expect those officers end of September, beginning of October to start taking calls. And in the end of August, we'll start another class with 9 of our own recruits in that class. And you can look about 11 months past that, we should have those officers taking their first call.
Thank you, Chief. Alderman Smith III.
And thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the Chief. Good evening, Chief.
Good evening.
Looking at the the budget here, and we have the line item for overtime regular under personnel services, and the department had requested $967,000, and the mayoral recommendation cut $67,000 from that down to $900,000. And it looks like holiday pay, the department had requested $772,534, and the mayoral recommendations cut $72,000 out of that down to a clean $700,000. My question is, how did you arrive at those figures? I assume you used some sort of formula or historical data to do that. So how did you arrive at that figure, and how much does it hurt the department to not have the funds that you had requested?
Thank you for the question, and that's what I was referring to in my opening remarks. I'll skip down to holidays. Take your last point first. I took what we spent in 24-25, and I added the 3% to that to get up to 772. Up to the top on regular overtime. Right now, we've expensed, I'm going to guess, about 1.1 million or thereabouts, pretty close. And we know we'll use about 1.3 million. Every year, in every budget I've ever done, by design, that account has been underfunded. And the reason that we know it's underfunded is we expect to take those surpluses out of regular wages. And so from the day that I've made chief, there was always a conscious decision by all three administrations that instead of, we know we're going to have these overages, instead of inflating that overtime number, to try to be a little bit more accurate and say, what do we normally see in terms of surplus, and how much can we use to put into that dedicated training. So while I asked for 967, I knew that that would never be enough, and so what I did is I took the previous number and I added the wage increase on top of that. I try to stay consistent to what we had the previous year, unless there's some extremes, knowing, and I've said this to every mayor in every budget meeting, and I've said it here many times, knowing that those numbers will never be enough, but I also add that I've never come back to you and asked for more money. So the math works. We've never had I mean, there are times where we've had 1 or 2 openings, but there's always been a surplus based upon openings or early retirement openings, same thing. And then again, to dedicated training, same thing on dedicated training. I know that we've probably spent about 185 or thereabouts this year, and I knew that 177 would be a little bit less than what we would need. And so understanding the number of openings that we do have, knowing that we will have those surpluses, not just this year, but next year. I'm sorry, did I answer your question?
You did, Chief, thank you.
Okay.
And through you, Mr. Chairman, so not having that $67,000 and $72,000 respectively, does it hurt the department at all? If it is underfunded, where would the money come from if that $67,000 and $72,005, where would that come from?
It comes out of the regular wages, the top number, knowing that, because that number reflects full staffing, and we're never at full staffing. We certainly aren't going to be in full staffing now. We're seeing historic number of openings. So that to make sure that I'm responsive to your question, there will be an issue if we aren't allowed to transfer up regular wages. But that has always been the understanding and the expectation. That's why I brought it up in the beginning, so everyone remembers that when we put these transfers through, it was done that way by design.
Thank you, Chief, and through you, Mr. Chairman, and I know you're not coming before this board and asking for more money, but if this board saw fit to put the money back in for these requests, then you would be able to apply it right to those line items. You would be able to plan for that for use this year and make sure that those accounts wouldn't have to come from other areas. You wouldn't have to look for vacancies. You wouldn't have to look for retirement for that. You'd be fully funded and
Sure, I understand.
fully operational.
I understand. When you look at this budget, it's one of the most complex budgets in the city, right? There's a lot of categories, and we transfer all the time because there are other categories that may be underfunded as well. And so we understand that. I understand that there may be some categories that I look at and say, well, this price went up. I've got to now take from this category and transfer into another. And finance sees those. I think you see some of those depending if we go from a different category or not. But I'm fine as long as there's always an understanding that those surpluses are by design will have to fund these other items, because if they didn't, then I would come in front of you for the first time and say, I need more money, and then the next budget I would say there isn't enough money in this account. But that's why I always start my remarks by reminding everybody of that.
Yeah, thank you, Chief Mel. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Alderman Pacelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Chief Mello, thank you for being here today to give us our presentation. I just have a couple questions. One is that you indicated there were, I believe, 9 openings after the 12 graduates. Is that accurate?
Yes, it is. That's the expectation is you never know.
Right, and so then when you have the next group that goes in, that won't be on the street for approximately a year taking their first call, you're still going to have 9 openings during that period of time.
Correct.
Unless you fill it from some other source. Those people coming into the academy don't fill those openings yet.
No, they don't, unless we choose to, on occasion, we'll take a lateral. The gentlemen to my right and left were laterals, but we don't like to do that because it comes with sometimes, not these instances, but with other challenges.
Understood. I can remember you making a presentation on that in the past. And then with that being said, then expecting to have those openings during a period of this year, you are comfortable with the numbers here still being able to fund the police in a way that doesn't impact public safety negatively, as long as we allow for the transfer if you do come here and ask for it?
That's correct.
Thank you very much.
Alderman Fowler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you. Thank you, Chief Mello. Can you talk a little bit more, you brought up the efficiencies that you found with, I think it was technology stuff in your presentation. Could you go through that again?
Sure. So we were going to have to replace all the modems and all the cruisers. And if you recall, in last year's budget request, although it wasn't funded, there was a number in there for modems. I can't remember what it was. It might have been about 150,000. We didn't need to buy those this year. We pulled back. We have a replacement cycle in everything we do, whether it be computers, whether it be modems, whether it be radios, tasers, handguns, and so we try to keep that moving so we don't wind up with a big request for a lot of equipment. We were able to pull back on some of that stuff as well because we're getting all new stuff. So you don't see those replacement pieces in here.
Okay, and thank you for that. And I saw that there's a line item that the department requested $290,000 for police cruisers, but the mayor and the Board of Finance recommended $0. How many police cruisers would that have purchased? And can you tell me a little bit about the state of our police cruisers at the moment?
That would have purchased 5. It's interesting though when I say it purchased 5, when you buy a cruiser and you spend X amount of dollars, you've got to outfit it, and it's another $15,000 or $17,000 to $22,000 for the outfit. You have to buy equipment. So these cruisers actually cost a lot of money, but we get those other costs aren't in here. They come from a different source. So that would have purchased, I wanted 6, that would have been 5. And my understanding is that it's either going to be purchased through the vehicle acquisition account. Is that where it's, I don't care where it comes from, but as long as we get them.
Okay, and then I think one of the final questions I had was obviously people around town have been seeing the red light cameras that are being put up. Can you speak to how the red light camera program is reflected in this budget, and how and are we near completion about putting all those up?
Sure. So that program's revenue neutral, so there's no funding in here for that. There isn't funding anywhere. Those are, so my understanding is the first phase, which would be on the city roads, will be, if I recall, 6 weeks on those. 6 weeks for those, I think 4 to 6 weeks. I happened to speak to one of the vendors, or the vendor that we had, that got the RFP, and for the ones on the post road, there's been a delay that's likely mid to late July, and I think it's a permitting issue in terms of what type of poles they're going to use. It's been taking a while. So we'll start it in 2 phases. Really wanted the school zone ones to come in and be installed before school was out. But once they get installed, we've already just about finished. I think this week we finished the 30-day educational campaign. That's why you've probably seen a lot of that. And then after that, each of those cameras, and it'll be in phases, will have a 30-day window where there's nothing but warnings given out. And then after the 30 days, then there'll be tickets or fines, excuse me.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for your good work.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Yes, Alderman Height.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, Chief Mello. Chief Mello, I'm looking at the budget here, and one thing that jumped out to me, I'm looking in the capital outlays, and I see the Accent Consolidated Contract budget item, and it's $819,000, and the recommendation is for 0 in that. That struck me as the largest discrepancy. Could you tell me more about that line item?
Sure. So the Axon contract is what you had approved earlier this year, and at that time, I was asked the question, how would that be funded, and that I couldn't answer. That it's up to the mayor and to the finance director to determine how it's being funded, and I believe, so I put it in the budget just as a placeholder, and I would defer to the mayor and finance director on how that's going to be funded.
We were able to pay the first year, we were able to use some ARPA money to defray the cost of the city for the first year. I think that include the hardware. We prorated it for a year, so I forget exactly how many dollars that included. Do you remember, Peter?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to the Aldermen, I believe the carved out invoice that we received for the hardware was a little over $500,000, a little over $500,000, and then there will be a second installment of, believe, a little over $700,000. That will be funded by ARPA funds. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, nothing further on that, Chief Mello. Thank you.
Thank you.
Alderman Healy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the chief. First of all, I want to thank you for the continuing, I know you mentioned May 20th, you have a graduation class, and you always extend an invitation to the members of the Board of Aldermen and city officials to attend those. And, with pride, I've attended, in the past, and it's a great honor and a great ceremony.
Thank you.
And I know the department does very well. We're very proud of the fact that our municipality has its own training academy equivalent to the Municipal Police Training Academy. So that's kudos to our standing in the law enforcement community in Connecticut. So the 9 open positions that you have, the aggregate value of that, those are fully funded within this budget?
My understanding, and I haven't broken this number down, this number provided by finance, but historically, my understanding is that all 120 positions are funded in this number.
Okay. So you have the ability based on your recruitment, and so on as you're moving forward, to after this graduating class, you'll be going through a recruitment process and they'll have another class and we'll see the ability to be able to attract the right candidates. I know you've had a recent new contract that was approved by the board, so hopefully that'll be attractive also. Additionally, I wanted to ask you about your fee accounts. So your 76 fund account for overtime and for vehicles. What's the current standing of those accounts? And from the last fiscal year, were there any amounts that were transferred over from last year to this year? So in your overtime account, what's that aggregate value? And in your vehicle account that you're collecting fees for the use of those municipal vehicles at traffic sites for vendors and so on, what's the total of that?
Sure, so it's a little bit different. We don't transfer from that account into, at least I've never authorized a transfer from that account into a regular account. Things are purchased through those accounts. There's sub-accounts in there. And so you're talking about 2 different accounts. You're talking about the private duty account, that every time somebody works a construction job, the city charges 25% surcharge. I think the city, I think we get about 13% of that or thereabouts. And that money is used to fund things that aren't funded by this budget. For instance, if we took uniforms, there's, I think, 58,000. That number's about 120,000. Ordinance, we spend about $75,000 a year in ordinance. If we've have to buy new radios or new guns or any of those things that you never see in here. Motorcycles, you never see that in here. I'm trying to think about certain training, you never see that in here. It helps keep this budget low, or I shouldn't say low, but at least it pays for things that aren't covered here. Now, on the car account, we charge $25 an hour per car. That money is not transferred. The purchases are made direct from those 76 accounts. Right now, there's $116,000 in that account. I need $222,000 in that account. As I mentioned, when we purchase cars, and I talked about all the equipment and the changeover fees for that car, and I said it's between $17,000 and $22,000, sometimes more. And I say we pay for that number of sources. That's the source I'm talking about. That money comes out of that account. That's how we fund all of our changeovers, all of our equipment, our cages, our bar lights, all those things that pretty pricey. Bar lights are $5,000, $6,000 now. And it pays for those fees. It also pays to paint the cars, to letter the cars, because it'll change the radio systems over, those kind of things. And when you're in a car, you're talking about not just radio systems, you're talking about computer systems, you're talking about cabling from modems, you're talking about dash cams, some have radar, you're talking about certain gun racks, you're talking about a secure tray in the back that has equipment in there, and your confinement, prisoner confinement area, and a number of things like that. So that's where that comes from.
The overtime account, so you have 116,000, the balance in the vehicle account for overtime based on fees received currently. Is that correct?
When you're talking overtime, I guess what you're talking about is private
The
duty.
fees that private duties.
Private
Yes,
duty
correct.
pay. So what happens with that money is used to pay, so when the vendor's charged for the overtime, the private duty, we call it private duty, we keep it separate, but I understand what you're asking. That money goes, including the 25% to that account, and finance pays the officer after receiving the money from the vendor. In fact, finance will pay the officer even if he didn't receive the money for the vendor, and we'll have to go and chase the vendor, and that happens on occasion. They take their fees for whatever their costs are, and then that money comes over to us, and that's private duty money, and that's what pays for. If you look back, there was a arbitration award. Sorry, we don't go to arbitration too often, so then it escaped me. There was an arbitration award where the city wanted to charge, at that time, 15%. And the union didn't want them to do that, believing they were going to use, quick short history lesson. The union didn't want them to do that. They were afraid they were going to lose these private duty jobs. And the city won, and the arbitration award said that money can be used to offset the costs of having police officers. So it's really not fair to the public that if an officer spends 10%, 5%, or whatever amount of his or her time, so it needs to pay for uniforms, needs to pay for training, needs to pay for the radio, the handgun, all those things. This is separate from the car rental account. All those things, whatever goes into funding a police officer, it pays that small percentage. And so based on that agreement, we continue to use that money to do all those things.
Okay, and you are fully meeting all your contractual obligations within this existing budget?
I am.
Okay, so that's an important question. The other point that I was making in this is that 9 open positions, as Alderman Pacelli had mentioned, you may or may not fill all of those within, this fiscal year to have an impact on that, but those are funds that are available within this contract. The funds that are available in your 76 fund account that you're using for overtime, because you're collecting fees from vendors and you're collecting fees relative to the use of the vehicles, are also funds that you can have a conversation with the finance director and the mayor's office about augmenting where you might have an operational need for some of the equipment matters and other things that you've articulated. Is that correct?
Just to be clear, not for overtime, not to pay these overtime accounts. And I know you and I are talking the same thing. You're calling it overtime, I'm calling it private duty. I just want to make sure that we're clear, but it will fund all those equipment and services, those kind of services like training and such.
I'm just pointing out that, as you indicated, there are certain funds that are available to the department that are not enumerated by a line item account number that's here, but historically, through the management practices and the way that the funds, operate, that, as well as fully funded positions that may or may not be, you're going to meet your contractual obligations by this budget, and you have other funds through your conversations as a director of a department, very important department, with the mayor and the finance director to be able to meet your financial obligations without additional funding.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Chief, I have a question about the resource officers, the school resource.
Sure.
What is the school, is that a 50-50 operation where the school pays 50%, you pay the other 50%?
That's an excellent question. I don't think it's supposed to be 50-50. I don't think it is anymore. And I mentioned that to the superintendent. We had a meeting this year. just as we were passing out, that I think we need to look at that, because the agreement was, it was 50-50. Now, I don't, Peter, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think it's gone up in the last 15 years, and certainly the pay's gone up, so that might be something that needs to be revisited. Because if it's not, then that means that we're paying more than the 50-50 split out of this budget. But please verify that. That's just my understanding of it.
Yeah, because they had their presentation last Wednesday night, and it seemed to me that they had that broken down. It was all broken up, and it looked like they were paying 50-50, like you had said earlier. But I don't know. I wanted to hear your side of it, as far as what's your responsibility is for the resource officers.
We fund 50%. Again, it's probably a question for the finance director to see if those adjustments ever were made. They might have been made. I know we talked about this a while ago. But it really isn't 50-50 in the sense that we have to train them, we have to equip them, so we're paying a lot more money than, but in terms of just raw salary, it's supposed to be a 50-50 split.
Thank you, Chief. Any more questions for the police department? Alderman Smith III.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and through you to the Chief. Chief, you don't draft up your budget in the funding for your budget in reliance on vacant positions that are fully funded, right? You go through line by line and you try and determine what you would need on those line by line items. You don't go through and say, I need $967,000 in wages, but I can take $915 because I know there will be money I can transfer from vacant positions that will be fully funded.
Actually, I do. I'm just to circle back. I guess the answer is that's incorrect, because I do that, because that's the way it's always been, only in those wage accounts. If you look back historically on every budget I've had, we've never had enough money for overtime. And I can remember vividly the conversations I've had with every mayor, and I let them know. And I said, just similar to what I said here today, just understand that there isn't enough money in overtime. There isn't enough money in training overtime. There isn't enough money in holiday. And the conversation is, but there will be overages. And so I just want to remind them, and I'm reminding you that on those numbers, because historically we know there's going to be significant overages. I think if you look back, we give quite a bit of money back. Like, we don't try to just spend what's in here, with the exception of this current year because of the wage increases. We've given some significant money back. We've never asked for more money. So we try to stay underneath there. But there are years that I have run out of overtime money in December. Normally I run out January, February. This year, we just ran out in March. So we stretched it, even with all those openings, because it's important to note that we have to have a certain number of officers in the field. And there is a contractual requirement that we hire back at least 66%. But in the summer, we need more like 100%, and in the winter, not so much. And we really push the edges of the envelope on that number, and we try to focus on really what the needs of the community. So if I'm down right now 22 people, or 21, actually 22, because we lost one, I have to hire people at time and a half to work contractually, to work 66% of those jobs, but sometimes more depending on the season and depending on where those openings lie, sometimes more, sometimes less. And so that does take a big part of that budget. And those kind of things are difficult to forecast. We do our best to forecast. We look at historical, references and say, okay, this is who's up for retirement, this is what we know, but this is historically how much we need to spend. So again, going back historically, we always run out of money. But I also want to say that number sounds like 1.2 million sounds like a lot. And when I first made chief, I never thought I'd be ever saying 1.2 million. But when you look at departments our size, same complexity, we spend a lot less. We're pretty tight when it comes to that. But to your point, in those areas and those areas only. I know it seems odd, but that is the way we've always done it.
And thank you, and through you, Mr. Chairman, thank you, Chief. That's good information for me to know, because, you know, the whole idea, and I'm sure what you're working towards, is to have all of those positions not only budgeted for, but filled.
Right.
Right?
Absolutely.
And so it's good information for me to know you do actually plan on using those funds, transferring those funds, because you know who's going to be filling those positions and not. I think, for me, the city has gotten into the habit of kind of relying on those vacant but budgeted for positions. And of course, it's always been my contention we shouldn't be doing that, because you could get into, there's budgeting problems that you could face if you have historically relied on the funds from those funded but vacant positions, and then they become filled. Now what do you do if you've always been historically relying on them? So I've always felt as though the budget should be funded with all of those positions in mind being filled. So I think that's what we should work towards, instead of relying on transfers, but I appreciate the information. That's useful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any more questions from the board? Alderman Smith Jr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chief, I want to circle back to the red light cameras and speed cameras for a moment. As I recall your financial projections on that proposal when it passed this board, I think it was 3 to 4 million a year or something like that. Are those cameras going to go live this year? And is that money going to begin flowing this year?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So it's in two different buckets right now. There's the public highway, or the streets that we own, city streets, and those are easy. We just get local permitting, and they're putting those up, and those are probably around 6 weeks out. But understand, we've got a 30-day window where we've got to just give warnings. The post road, it requires DOT approval, and those permits have been held up. Something to do with the type of poles. And so that, my understanding is, it's been explained to me last Thursday, that would likely be mid to late July. It certainly could be sooner, it certainly could be longer. But again, those would have to go into a 30-day warning period. But it's also, I think, important that that money can only be used for specific situations. The first thing it does is it pays for the program, because we're not paying for any of the cameras or any of the service. It has to pay for that. It has to pay the cost of the processing the tickets. We're going to have to hire people to do this. We don't have the staff yet waiting for it to come in. So we'll have to hire staff to do that. And then it has to be used for highway safety improvements, or to fund safer streets. And those are the requirements within the statute.
Does this budget that we have here anticipate the receipt of any of those funds yet?
No.
In here?
No, the funds won't come to the police department. That revenue won't pass through us. That revenue will go right to the city. Similar to the revenue when we write tickets, our officers write tickets, the state gives us $10, I think, per ticket. And that, I don't know what that is. It's not a revenue that passes through us. The revenues that pass through us are like parking tickets and fines and fees and those kind of things. But this we won't see, or at least it won't pass through. We may see it.
Then maybe if I might, Mr. Chairman, to the finance director, are those revenues anticipated anywhere in our budget here for this year?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to Alderman Smith Jr., no. We have not added those anticipated numbers into the 27 budget.
Okay. And that's interesting. So, but Chief, we anticipate those cameras going live sometime this summer, maybe fall, and then they'll be operating all year. And if they do operate as projected, we can expect somewhere in the $3 to $4 million revenue range.
Right, those numbers were based upon the analysis of the traffic flow and the number of violations minus 75% compliance rate on state roads and 90% compliance rate on city roads. And I've talked to, there's a number of these in the state now, and that's what a lot of departments are seeing somewhere around there. So yeah, those numbers should be fairly accurate.
All right, and I know when we voted on this, you know, my point of view on that is that's taxation by citation, and I thought it was a bad policy, but we're not here to talk about the policy tonight. Is there a place where the average citizen, or even like myself, can go? Is it on the webpage where these cameras will be situated so that we know and we can either pay attention to our speed or avoid them entirely?
Sure. So I announced them in a public meeting. We had a few public meetings too, actually. And it's been reported many times in the media. We can certainly add that to our webpage. But I think what's even more helpful is there'll be plenty of signage on both ends that alerts you it's there. And if you have like a Waze or Google Maps or something, if it's in your car and it's running, we have to report to them. That's going to alert you and let you know. So there's a lot of ways, if you don't want to speed, that you should be notified. But I think that's a good idea, actually, now that I think about it, putting it on the website.
Yeah, if you could, I think that'd be nicer, Mr. Mayor, maybe the city website too, or something like that, just to let people know.
Yeah, we can do that.
And then maybe back to the finance director, this 3 or 4 million as it comes in, how will we deal with that? Will there be supplemental appropriations? How is the board going to allocate and authorize the spending of this money?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to Alderman Smith, what do you mean in terms, are you looking at the expenditures or the revenues alone?
You know, I'm actually talking about the revenue. If 3 or 4 million come in, it's going to far exceed the expenses of the program, and that money is going to flow into the general fund and be available for, well, presumably whatever we say it's going to be available for, but I think we would have to authorize the expenditure of those funds. But I'm not really sure. I mean, we've got a brand new revenue stream that's just about to begin, and I'm asking how it gets dealt with. How do we do that?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to Alderman Smith, if it's not in the budget, it would still be under your control. It would help to contribute to the surplus in the general fund. As you know, there is a use of fund balance. It would help to replenish that. And then in future years, it would be available for appropriation by this board if it chooses to do so, through allocation transfers, through emergency spending, or to offset shortages or deficits in other expenditure accounts.
May I just remind, there are strict guidelines on what it can be used for, and there's an audit on that, and I just want to make sure that that's on the record.
Well, yeah, I know, but it's also, and that was right in the state statute, I think, that
right,
it allocated, but those were big categories, and money's fungible. You know, if we're going to do highway safety repairs, I mean, you know, that can be anything, building bridges, repaving roads, maybe even sidewalk, I mean, and then $1 offsets another, and you can move money around. It's all fungible.
Sure.
It's all fun money for the city. It's taxation by citation, and we're going to get to spend it. You know, it may be allocated, but it's fungible. Thank you.
Chief, we couldn't help but notice how much construction going on in the city. Mm-hmm. And I notice your patrolmen are on the job all the time. Now, they have to obviously put in for that in advance so that you have. What if you don't have a spare officer for that particular construction site? Where do they have other resources to man that site?
So if you recall, there was a ordinance that you were on the board that passed probably 15 years ago, where the police chief has the authority to 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 dictate when a police officer is used. We don't really enforce, residential streets aren't really an issue, but at night or in those main streets, they are required to hire a police officer. Now, if they don't get one, then they've got required to put flagmen out. They just have to be able to operate safely. What we don't do is take an officer off city duty and put him on those.
That's where I was going with that. Thank you, Chief. Any more questions for the Milford Police? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and through you to the chief. So I'm learning a lot here tonight, so this is very educational for me. Now, the revenue that's generated from the red light cameras that we had just talked about, there are certain guidelines as to what they can be used for, as you had just articulated. And I'm wondering, this year we're looting $12 million from the contingency fund. I'm wondering we have this program set up and we're surveilling people's speed and we're finding them on their speed and then it goes into the general fund. Is that a permissible use of the revenue that's generated from the red light cameras, using that to offset spending in the city? Or is that not permissible use, non-permissible use?
I'm sorry. All I can do is recite what's in the statute, and I would ask, the city attorney's not here, for somebody else in that space to, I'm sorry. You usually sit here. I'm sorry, city attorney. And it's interesting because I was talking with him before he came in, so I should remember that. I've talked to my colleagues about the interpretation of what that means. My lane is just to make sure that our piece of that, which is the implementation, facilitation of that, is funded, and that staff is funded, and the processing is funded, and the equipment is funded. What happens after that would really be up to the city attorney and the finance director, and I assume you folks, to make that legal interpretation. I can only tell you what's in the statute.
Understood, and thank you, Chief, and through you, Mr. Chairman, it just, I think that the residents of Milford would be very unhappy to know that they are paying fines to something when we take $12 million out of a fund that has a healthy balance. My concern is that another $2, $3, $4 million of revenue, and the city may say, well, here's an extra $2 or $3 million. Let's use that because we have it. I think the residents of Milford would be very unhappy to know that. So that's really concerning to me. I thought this was going to be the use of the revenue generated from the program would be more geared towards the public safety side. But it sounds like it might be able to be used for just about anything with some guidelines per statute. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Alderman Healy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Chief Mello. The program was well designed. You presented previously. This board looked at it. This required DOT approval. You did traffic studies relative to where these cameras should be implemented. This program will put out public information so that all the residents in Milford have benefit of knowledge of knowing where these cameras will be deployed. What we're looking to achieve is to change behavior, and in particular relative to school safety zones, so that the kids, the crossing guards, in those high peak traffic time periods where they're coming and going, from school, that we're impacting safety for the good of the community, and that those funds that will initially be garnered from any traffic tickets that are issued after the warning period is done, first will help to augment to pay for the program. The goal is, again, to change behavior relative to safety and management. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And then, thereafter, if there are funds that, are available, funds could be, as the finance director indicated, available for this board and the chief executive through the finance director to make a determination to prudently use additional funds to help in service to our community collectively. Conflating or saying that somehow using funds from the unassigned balance fund of $12 million might be utilized for something That's a fund that's used for a rainy day fund to help augment the city in any type of an emergency, situation. Funds that are derived from this program could be added to that fund, and then through a very prudent overview by this board and the chief executive and the finance director, funds can be allocated where we deem collectively, appropriate. So the unassigned balance fund is there to be utilized for us in the budgetary process to help mitigate taxation, which is what each municipal head or chief executive has used throughout history to help keep a stable tax revenue flow and try to mitigate, the bottom line to the taxpayers. So I don't want to conflate things, but I'm just sharing information. My colleague, Alderman Smith, has, indicated certain things. So I want to make sure that, we're having, just an open dialogue about how the budgetary process works, and that there is certainly a sincere, honest approach and discernment by this board and by the administration, each administration, to make sure that every dollar is being spent appropriately. Thank you.
Any more questions from the board? Alderman Smith III.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and through you. To the chief and to my fellow aldermen, it is not a conflation. It is a reality. When we impose a tax through a program to the residents of Milford and then use those funds out of the contingency fund, rainy day fund, whatever you'd like to call it, that's a bad policy. And I didn't know it could be used for that. So it's not a conflation. That's an actual reality of what we can do in the city. Thank you.
Any more questions for the police department? Hearing none. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Assistant Chiefs for coming tonight and answering all our questions. Appreciate it. Next department we're going to be hearing from this evening is the Animal Control, page 59. Scott Ellington. Thanks. Good evening, Scott.
Good evening.
You
Thank you
could
for your time.
start your presentation anytime you feel you want.
Okay, for those that don't know, I am the head animal control officer. We do run a pet food bank for residents that are down on their luck, which is run by I was. That better? Oh, okay. We do run a pet food bank for residents that are down on their luck, so they don't have to surrender their pets or choose between feeding themselves. We do run a feral cat program. We also service Orange. So both those services are available to both Orange and Milford. Now I'll get down to the brass tacks. The things that I'm asking for, over time, I did ask for $30,000, but we can supplement that with Orange money, so $10,000 can stay the same. Temp seasonal, due to minimum wage going up, I'm asking for $3,000 more. The next two are other med fees and services. I'm asking for an increase of $10,000 in other med fees and services and $5,000 in rabies control. Vet costs have gone through the roof. Anybody with pets can attest. My animal commission feels that I should have asked for more, and the only other thing that I'm asking for an increase is on contractual costs. That's to go on to the police system. It'd be initial $10,700 for the first year. That's $7,300 for the program, and then $3,400 annual after that. And that's basically all I'm asking for.
Anyone have any questions for animal control? Yes, Alderman Fowler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you. When you brought up the contractual costs, or what was that? You want to be on the police system or something that would cost about $10,000 to get onto a system? Could you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, right now we use what's called an ARM system. It is run off a thumb drive. It operates on Windows 95. I'm surprised it hasn't already crashed. That's where we keep all our records. And the police have an animal control module, so it would just be an initial $10,700 for the first year. And then the police, like for example, Freedom of Information requests, they can actually just go in and get it. Right now they have to, any requests that they receive, then they have to contact us, then we got to go into ARMS and print it out and then send it to them, so, and that'll cut that off. So like, for example, I said $10,700, that's only for the first year. The $7,300 is for the program, and then there's the maintenance for $3,400 annual. So I would only be asking for that $10,700 the first year, then after that it can drop down to about $5,400. I believe I was only at $2,000 in contractual costs.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Healy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you. When you're talking about this system and it's currently operating ARMS, Windows 95, have you had communication with Adam Heller, Director of IT for our municipality on this matter?
Regarding that, the last time, actually it was probably before Adam, it was even the head, Liz was. She got it running on the thumb drive. If anything happens to the thumb drive, we can't run the program. He is aware of it, but like I said, they can't even update the computer. It will not run on anything but Windows 95. The company pretty much does not service it anymore.
Okay, so it's an antiquated system that needs to be replaced.
Yep.
And you're saying that, have you had any conversation with Adam directly in the last two budget cycles relative to this particular matter?
I haven't. This has come through the PD.
Okay, so is that how you're structured? You don't have the ability to communicate with the director of IT relative to this IT-related problem?
No, there's no rule saying that I can't. It's just that the police supervise us. They're the ones that brought this up and said, hey, we can get you on this. So, but I have not talked directly to Adam, no.
It would be a good suggestion, because you're administratively working with the police department. The chief is not in the room currently and has left, but to try and, meet with the chief and with Adam Heller, Director of IT, to see if we can resolve this problem with something that's within our enterprise license, because operating on ARMS through Windows 95 obviously is antiquated, and the ability to be able to do something. So what I'm asking for is, and a suggestion would be, some direct communication with those parties that have administrative responsibility in these specific areas that we're talking about, and we might be able to find the funding, because this amount is not a huge amount, but when you talk about your inability to function properly and your inability then possibly not to be able to answer freedom of information requests or general requests from the public, this is not proper. So it's not good business practice, and it's not what we should be operating under. So I would again look for the administration to give you some guidance directly on how to resolve this problem. If we need to come up with $10,700 and $3,400 for the annual payment for this program going forward, plus the initial $7,300 that it might be, but as other members of this board have said, do we need to put an RFP out, to look and find the best, program for it? So, yeah, this is an operational deficiency that obviously needs to be taken care of, and it should be within this budget cycle.
Yeah, I can do that. It's not that we wouldn't be able to answer FOI requests, it's just because we do keep paper copies, it would just take a lot longer, because then we'd have to go through each to find out what their information is.
Yes, and I'm assuming you're not overstaffed, so you don't want to be able to, have to tie up people to be able to, to do that. Technology is where we should be augmenting all our functions so that we have efficiencies and that responses are timely in service to the community. So I would look for the administration to assist you in solving this problem. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Smith III.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and through you to Director Ellenson, good evening.
Evening.
The money that passes before this board and passes this board is breathtaking, between budgets and bonding and red light camera programs and the rest of it. And tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions. So when I see some line items like in your budget allocation here, it's confusing to me, okay? And I'm referring to the rabies control line item here. I see that you had requested $20,000, and the mayor's recommendation had slashed that by $5,000 down to $15,000, and I know that's to match last year's ask.
Okay.
And that small amount, again, with everything that I just mentioned, everything considered, just doesn't make any sense to me. So how did you come up with that $20,000 figure, and what are you not able to accomplish if that is rabies control is slashed by $5,000?
It's, like I said, it's mostly, I have no control over real vet costs. Some of the things that come out of that is the feral cat program, where we spay, neuter, release cats that are feral. Also coming out of that is if we need anything sent up for rabies testing, like a dog or a wild animal that bit somebody. And it's all kind of random whether or not, so I can't really budget, I can't even go by history on it. And I just feel that I could do with that. It's kind of hard to quantify, but also coming out of that is when we get rabies shots for the officers, because we handle wildlife sometimes and we handle dogs and we can get bit. Last time we had that, it was $3,000 to get shots, and which is a vaccination. So.
And thank you, Mr. Chairman, and through you to the director. So then if I understand correctly, you would be able to do as much as you could up to the point where that allocated budget amount is spent, and then you would have to stop, right?
To a certain degree. I mean, we are one of the ones that do take donations. I have an animal commission, and they do get donations. Right. So that's used a lot for medical. In fact, that's what I'm using this year, since I really didn't see all the vet bills increasing by 40%. So I do have that avenue to, beyond this, but.
Excellent. Thank you, Director. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any more questions for Animal Control? Yes, Alderman Bannon.
Not used to me asking questions. Through you to the director, I was wondering about the fees paid by the town of Orange. How much do they pay annually to use our animal control?
Annually, $100,000.
$100,000. And is that negotiated every year, or is that just a flat rate we've been using for several years?
It's a flat rate that we've been using for several years. When it first started, it was only $75,000.
Okay, because I know the cost of veterinarian services has gone up. So is there any chance that that can be negotiated to go a little higher?
It's always possible. I mean, that's kind of above me. I wasn't involved in any of the negotiations. That would be something, I would assume, Mr. Mayor?
Okay. And then, when we do receive those funds, does it go straight to the animal control, or does it go to the city?
It goes into what's known as special accounts, a 76 account, and then finance asks me, where do I want it? So some go into overtime, I'll allot that money. Some go into medical, some go into purchasing new vehicles, whatever's needed at the time.
Okay, so yeah, you spread it out. And then, that was my next question, what are these funds used for? And another question I had was the overtime. I know 10,000 was budgeted by the mayor and the finance board, but you requested 30,000. Do you find that you have a lot of overtime?
Yeah, definitely around 30,000. But as I said, right now, 20,000, that's financed through the orange money.
Okay.
So,
All right, thank you.
you're welcome.
Any more questions for animal control? I think that's it there, Scott. Thank you
All
for
right.
coming out tonight and answer all our questions. Thank you for taking care of all those animals.
Thank you for your time.
The next department on our agenda would be the Economic and Community Development. Director Robert Towns. Good evening, Robert.
Good evening, everyone.
You could start your presentation whenever you like.
All right, so thank you so much for your time. And for those of you who haven't met me, and I certainly want to change that soon, I certainly want to meet with each one of you individually to have conversations about economic and community development. But for those of you who haven't met me, my name is Robert Towns, and I've had the wonderful pleasure of serving as Milford's Economic and Community Development Director since July. I've lived in Milford for 25 years, got married here, I'm raising 2 children here who are third-generation Jonathan Law students, and I'm a taxpayer. So I say all those things to point out that I am a very invested stakeholder in what happens here. I'm excited to be working as the Economic and Community Development Director here in Milford because this is an attractive community, a vibrant place with a tremendous history and a strong quality of life. Milford is a dynamic place where people can live, work, and play, shop, and eat. However, our small city with a big heart is at an inflection point. How do we deal with the challenges of the rapid evolution of so many sectors of our society while maintaining our growth, our momentum, and our charm? My job is to ensure that Milford remains a viable coastal city that balances its economic growth with community character. A community that leverages its shoreline, its historic downtown charm, its strong neighborhood identities, and strategic location to attract business, support residents, and enhance quality of life. When I took on the role back in July, I immediately assessed the resources that were available to me in my department. From a headcount standpoint, I saw that my department consisted of a full-time director, a part-time, 20 hours a week clerk A, and a community development block grant coordinator. The CDBG coordinator facilitates the city's approximately $550,000 CDBG grant through the Federal Department of Housing and Urban Development. But by HUD rules, the city can only use up to 20% of that grant for salaries and benefits. Our CDBG coordinator's salary is completely funded by the federal grant, so she cannot apportion any of her time to city business not related to that grant. So that brings me to my departmental budget. My budget that I'm presenting this year is a flat one with one exception. I'm looking to upgrade my part-time clerk A position to a full-time economic development specialist position. The headcount in my department would remain the same, the clerk A position would be eliminated, and the economic development specialist would do the following: support business recruitment, retention, and expansion efforts, serve as a point of contact for businesses, developers, and entrepreneurs, maintain business and property databases, and assist with site selection, coordinate business outreach, site visits, and networking events, assist with small business programs, training, and resource connections, develop marketing content, including social media, newsletters, and promotional materials, and help plan and execute city events, trade shows, and community initiatives. And did you know, since I started in July, my department has already been the lead on our annual 9/11 Remembrance, the elected officials' inauguration event, the annual tree lighting, and now we're the department serving as the administrator of the city's special committee planning the celebration and commemoration of America's 250th birthday this summer. One of the things that we as an organization need is someone to help also to provide the administrative and operational support, meeting coordination and reporting, and assist with grant tracking and reporting and special projects, like housing and tourism. I understand the importance of being a good steward of every single taxpayer dollar. But in order for Milford to not just thrive, in order for me to help position Milford to thrive past this inflection point and not just survive it, we need to make investments in economic and community development. As a taxpayer, I watched this body ask my predecessor, Julie Nash, about ways to enhance the effectiveness of our community economic development initiatives. A full-time economic development specialist is an important part of the toolkit needed to tackle our future goals and opportunities. And speaking of Julie Nash, I'd be remiss if I didn't take a moment to commend her for the tremendous work she did for the city of Milford. She's positioned the city well to be able to move forward from a position of strength. And to talk about that strength, during the past fiscal year, up to date, our city has recorded 688 new business starts, tracking about where Milford has been over the last 4 years. We're averaging about 730 new business starts every year annually. So to say 688, we're tracking right about where we should be, and we know we are also outpacing many of our surrounding communities. This is an indicator of the economic growth in the city. With a slight increase in housing permits from 128 to 129 this year, the city is addressing the growing demand for homes, particularly in transit-oriented developments. These projects, especially those strategically located near transportation hubs, cater to populations eager for convenient living options. The city has adapted its zoning regulations to allow for live entertainment in our downtown area. Very important if we're going to start to do things to attract younger people to this community. Milford is an older community by age. We average per median, our median age, is 46.8. When you compare that to the American median age, which is 39, and compare that to Connecticut, which is 41, Milford is an older community. But there are things that we can do that really can enrich our community and bring more people in to support our community as we move forward. The changes that we've made in zoning and other ways are really enriching our cultural fabric and making our downtown a vibrant destination for residents and visitors alike. And so we were also very proud this year that the transit-oriented development on River Street with a parking garage opened. People are utilizing that parking. That is a very important step. And now we are starting to also see businesses move into the spaces that are there. So the mixed use development has been a very important thing for our downtown and will continue to be an important thing as we also want to transition away from a place where people think we'll come to Milford in the summer and in the wintertime things lag a little bit. Instead, we have the opportunity with parking, with covered parking, et cetera, for people to be able to come down and visit our attractions all year round. During this past year, the city has not only maintained its momentum, but it's laid the groundwork for success. This growth was evident in economic indicators. We are a thriving business environment. We have a robust housing market. We have a resilient workforce. But more than that, the city continues to strengthen its sense of community. I'm seeing that every day as I'm working to plan the America 250 event. The number of organizations and people that want to be involved and want to celebrate not just the American 250th birthday, but to celebrate Milford, our sense of place, and like I said, our rich, deep history. That continued success that we're having in its totality is not just being noticed locally. I know Ed Bonessi's behind me, and one of the great things is that his neighborhood, Woodmont, was named one of the best coastal neighborhoods in the United States. There have been other places where we've been named best place to live in the United States, best place to retire. Those things don't happen by accident. A lot of those things happen because if you look at the metrics behind those honors, Milford has a very, very, very strong sense of community. And Milford has a very, very strong ability to now promote itself to people who want to come in and want to be a part of this. And so I leave this presentation right now before I'm ready for questions and just say that the economic conditions in Milford are very strong. We have a diversified economy across many sectors. Healthcare, retail, and manufacturing are very strong here. Also, small business and entrepreneurial growth is strong. The one thing that we have to kind of work together and be solution-oriented around is what we're going to do, with the corporate office spaces in our community. There is lagging demand there, but we are already working through initiatives already started before I joined the city, but also through other opportunities now available to us through the state to address those corporate, those empty corporate offices, to be able to have mixed-use developments in those spaces. We are very blessed. Just last week, one of those corporate office spaces on Wheelers Farms Road was purchased by a local developer, and I look forward to meeting with him soon to be able to discuss what may happen there. But beyond, I will just say that Milford is no longer our little secret, and now the work comes where we get together, we all pool our resources and make sure we invest so that we can have Milford in 2026 and beyond be this place that we know it is, be that shining beacon on the hill, be the place that, we attract people in a sustainable and successful manner where we work together, where we provide housing for all the people who want to live in this community.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for the economic development? Alderman Healy.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chairman, to Director Towns. Congratulations on being appointed and the good work that you've started as you've communicated. And also, I'm assuming you're in partnership with the newly appointed Director of Permitting and Land Use, Carol Minton.
Yes.
And that you've had dialogue with her relative to moving these programmatic matters forward on behalf of the municipality. Is that correct?
Yes, we actually are starting to have weekly meetings to make sure we're discussing all of the matters in front of each of our departments so that we're working in a collaborative way to make sure that we understand what's happening, what's coming before us, but also we can plan and strategize around how we can deal with any challenges that may come our way.
Yes, because we're certainly looking to attract new businesses into Milford. The numbers are good, but they could be better, especially on the commercial side. So in collaboration with your office and additionally with the good work of Carol Minton and her resources through building and permitting, the more we can do to augment and assist people, in getting the information in a timely way is critically important to achieve. The end result is that we look attractive and that we're user-friendly, is important, and that we're meeting those mandates. Obviously, there's always questions to be asked, but it's a matter of getting the timely answers that help, move projects forward in a timely way. Can you tell me relative to our affordable housing and our statistics relative to affordable housing? Are you directly involved in that? Have you had any conversations with Carol Minton about the accountability? We have a statutory compliance requirement that we need to meet on an annual basis, reporting our statistics. Are you directly involved in that?
Yes, Carol and I actually, as a matter of fact, as part of the agenda for our weekly meeting, so our next meeting is on Thursday, today she was diving into that and talking about how we're going to meet our statutory requirements. That is one of the economic and community development pressures that we will have, is making sure that we are abiding by state statute to reach the goals that we need to reach. And we're looking through everything to make sure that we are tackling this in the way that we should, and making sure that we report out. You talk about timeliness, also report out so that we understand where we are, and that gives us the ability to have the conversations about not only just the just the numbers, but also talking about where. That's an important conversation as well. Trying to make sure that we meet the goals and the 10% rule that the 830G state law requires is one that's going to require all of us to come together to be solution-oriented till we can address the needs of this community.
And that's why I have mentioned previously at board meetings, budgetary meetings, and to administrations relative to that specific responsibility should be codified in the job description, your job description, or either the Director of Land Use job description, to make sure that we are absolutely tracking those numbers on an ongoing basis so that we can meet our statutory compliance requirements, and as you've indicated, to make sure that we're user-friendly relative to the process to developers and to all, our community-based representatives, so that we can try and meet those mandates, because this is a national issue, it's a state issue, and obviously the legislature has been actively involved in related affordable housing statute requirements. So I would certainly encourage you, when you're meeting with Carol, to make sure that this is a top priority. Thank you.
Any questions from the board for the economic development? Yes, Alderman Fowler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you, and thank you very much for your presentation. You talked a lot about, obviously, positive growth and in our community, but just can you talk a little bit about some of the challenges that you come across? Because I think I saw a survey, rich states, poor states, and Connecticut's economic outlook is about a 48th, and it's been there for a while, but and economic performance. Have you run into any issues, attracting businesses to our city based on those, economic indicators? Or are they moving out of state? What's in your position? I know you're fairly new to the role, but just what have you seen in terms of the challenges?
So one of the things first to start with a positive is that, as I mentioned, we have a diversified economic base. And so that's very helpful, so that any one sector starts to wane a little bit, we have the ability to lean on the others for a little while. So I did mention one challenge, which is something that exists, not just here in Milford, but around, which is the changing environment around corporate office spaces. Lots of communities, municipalities are having questions now as to what to do with these spaces. A lot of the spaces here in Connecticut, because they are a little bit smaller of a footprint than some of the big cities, are no longer attractive to the bigger corporations. So what do we do? But with that being said, we also have opportunity. Because as I mentioned before, state statute is changing to allow for more mixed-use development there. Here in Milford, changing some of the zoning to allow for more mixed-use development in some of those places. So that's opportunity. That's challenge number one, and that's just one way we can address that challenge. There are other ways that we can do something as well. And so we are talking with different people who have different ideas about what they can do with these spaces. So for some people, it is some kind of a co-working environment, and to be able to be a place where you can build and create a business incubator where different co-workers come in together, or different companies are there, and then all of a sudden they can build on all of the inertia that exists by being in the same place and being the same creative and move forward. So that's one way. Another challenge is something that also is a national challenge that we see everywhere, and it's addressing what to do with larger shopping plazas, malls. There has been, a transformation in how America shops, and so we need to figure out how we're going to deal with that. And so a challenge is to make sure that we're addressing with the ownership of the mall locally here, how we're going to deal with the transformations that need to happen to keep that place very vibrant, especially because it is it's on the front porch for the city. Many people see it. And so we need that to be a vibrant place. And so having the right conversations, bringing the right stakeholders to the table to make sure that we move that place forward, and so that we can make sure that we continue to position Milford and to be successful as we move forward. A third challenge is also the change globally in manufacturing. We saw that right around the time of the election, when Edgewell made the announcement that they are moving their manufacturing out of the United States into a plant in another country. The one good thing I can say about that is almost as soon as Edgewell made that announcement, somebody called with interest in possibly going into that space down the road. They even want to buy it potentially beforehand and lease it back to Edgewell until Edgewell leaves the property at the end of 2027. So just saying that the one thing I would say is, with challenge comes opportunity, and so we need to be forward-thinking to develop the responses to have the opportunity to make sure that we continue to make Milford thrive and not just survive.
Right. Yeah. Because I guess the point that I'm thinking of is, the more businesses that come here will help with property taxes, right? And I wish you all the best of luck in in your job, and I know you're going to do great in bringing.
Well, thank you. And one of the things also is just partnerships with different learning organizations, Milford's public schools and other schools, because we are also preparing our workforce for jobs that may not even exist today. And so making sure that we have those partnerships. One of the things that I'm really trying to do right now, and that's why I mentioned it off the top, that I want to meet with each one of you individually, is having those conversations with a lot of different stakeholders, putting surveys out right now about challenges and opportunities for our local business community, working through the Downtown Milford Business Association and other places, but also making sure that my ear is to the ground about the things that are happening, not just here in Milford, but statewide and also nationally, so I can bring back the best counsel to this body, to the mayor, and to everyone else, so that we can position Milford to be successful. Because one of the reasons why I took this job is because I want this place to be a place that's very vibrant. When my children, who are high schoolers right now, are out in the real world and out in the workforce, et cetera, I want this to be home for them just like it's home for me. And so I have that future outlook, and I want to make sure that we do the right things so that we are positioned to be a really thriving place in 2050 and beyond.
Thank you very much.
Any more questions for economic development? I don't see any.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Towns. An excellent presentation. Thank you for the work you do for the city. The next department coming up is open space, page 34. And the open space and sustainability manager is Jeremy Grant. Good evening, Jeremy.
Hi, good evening. So my budget is very easy. It's one line item. The city has 3,300 acres of open space throughout the city, which is really vital for having green spaces, having trees, having those natural areas, taking it in, separating our development. I do assessments and maintain all the records on the open spaces, as well as lead a lot of different volunteer groups, whether it be cleanups or invasive cleanups, and also take and collaborate with pretty much every department in the city on various projects. I'm lucky enough to take in, run a couple great programs as well. One of them is our tree giveaway that we just had last week, which I know a lot of people on this board have participated in the past 6 years. It was an amazing celebration, and one that actually people there told me it was their favorite thing that Milford does. We also have our Earth Day celebration coming up this coming Saturday on the Green from 10 to 1. So I invite all of you to attend, and everybody watching on YouTube as well. But I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
I just got a question for the Charles Island. Are you involved in that, or is the Tree Commission?
So Charles Island being a state property, it is a 501c3 that works directly with CT Deep on doing that project. I've had conversations with the people involved with it over time, but it is a state project.
Thank you. Alderman Smith III.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and through you. Good evening, Director Grant. I'm a little upset, not at you, at myself for missing the tree giveaway this year. That is also one of my favorite days of the year, being a local beekeeper. I have from last year a basswood tree in my yard from the tree giveaway, and it budded, so it survived. So I did a decent job on that, thankfully. And I think my wife will laugh. She says I always try and work in beekeeping to any conversation, so this is on brand for me. But that is a wonderful program. It really, really is. If there's any part of the budget that deserves a line item increase, it would be the tree giveaway to service more people. I know you got plenty of people that always email you and say, hey, is there a tree I forgot about, whatever, I being one of them this year. And I know we only have so many. So I would love to see that program expanded, because all I hear, and having taken part of it, I know how wonderful that is and how many volunteers you actually have. I mean, it's a pretty incredible thing when you go down there in Eisenhower and circle through and pick up your tree or wherever you had it this year. So thank you for that. And I appreciate the presentation tonight. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any more questions for open space? Yes, Alderman Fowler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you. Could you just, thank you, Director Grant. Could you
just reiterate, how much open space do we have, just in terms of acreage?
It's about 3,300 acres. Yeah, that's a combination of city property, land trust property, properties that are deed restricted open space, but as a total, about 3,300 acres.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions for open space? Yes, Alderman Healy.
Thank you. Mr. Director, through you, Mr. Chairman, to the Director, of the 3,300, what is the largest top 6 parcels that we might have contiguous?
I mean, off the top of my head, I would say the Wheeler Marsh is definitely one of the largest, in the southern area of Milford. Also, Eisenhower Park.
How big is that?
200 plus acres. I can't say exactly. Eisenhower Park is another very large one, combined with Solomon Woods. That's 100 acres. Those are pretty much the mass areas that we have that are open space. I mean, with that 3,300 acres, it's separated out between over 650 different parcels. A lot of those, are ones that are just kind of jigsawed together to combine to one. But some of them are as small as 0.1 acre, even smaller.
Okay, thank you. And comment back to Alderman Smith with beekeeping. He just want to comment, he was very generous and shared honey with all of us collectively here, so appreciate it.
The more basswood trees, the more honey for the board. So let's get more trees for the tree giveaway.
Any more questions for the Open Space Department? That's it. Nobody has any more questions. Thank you, Jeremy, for your presentation and for answering all our questions.
Thank you, everyone.
Keep up the good work. The next department on our agenda is the Harbor Management and Marina. Page 110, Director Jim Donegan. Good evening, Jim.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Board of Aldermen. Last season, we had another very successful summer down at the harbor. We increased our marina reservations again, this time over 5% over the previous year. That's 6 years of back-to-back bringing more boats and more people into downtown Milford every season. After a long, cold winter, we're working on putting everything back together in the mooring field, the marina, the docks, and getting ready for summer. We've started taking transient marina reservations, and they are filling quickly, as always. We're filling our mooring fields and our dinghy and kayak storage and getting ready for the summer. Our proposed budget this year is very similar to the previous years, only a few minor changes, but I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone may have.
Alderman Smith III.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and through you. Good evening. I think that the Harbor Commission is the most consistent liaison meeting that I attend. And I think it's due in large part to Commissioner Harlan and Commissioner Pernetta making sure that I'm there. Because if I don't show up, they're probably going to come to my house and drag me there. I'm joking, but they always make sure that I know when the meetings are, and I missed it this month because of the budgeting hearings that we had. But I wanted to ask you, there was a lot of discussion this year with the ice eaters and the problems in the harbor and everything like that, and at a couple of the Harbor Commission meetings, there was a lot of talk about having to borrow ice eaters and buying new ones for next year, and there was a plan on buying a whole number of different ones so that we were really set up this year and making sure that we weren't short on any equipment, especially these ice eaters. Right. So my question would just be, was there money enough in the funds that the Harbor Commission has to purchase those, and are those purchased now?
Yes, so you're correct. This winter was, as we all know, an extraordinarily cold winter. The harbor froze solid for many weeks. During that time, I was down there physically cutting ice away from the docks, moving around the ice eaters that we have. and just trying to protect the marina and the pilings that are there. The system that we have is a bunch of, they're basically drop-in water circulators so that they bring warmer water from lower up to the surface, helps melt the ice, and we move those around. They do have a certain life to them, so we are going to add more to them. And the Harbor Commission has approved adding approximately 14 more to the almost 30 that we have. So going forward in the future, we will be prepared for extremely cold winters and things like this when they come up.
And thank you, I appreciate that very much. And through you, Mr. Chairman, has there been any substantial discussions with respect to the dredging of the harbor? And if there has, where is that money going to come from? Because my understanding is that is quite expensive to do.
Yes, so 3 years ago, the Army Corps of Engineers came in, and they are responsible for the federal channel and the federally designated anchorage. And that project was, the dredging for that project was done about 3 years ago, completing between 75 and 80% of that dredging. There's still another portion that needs to be done that the Army Corps is responsible for. We're continuing to talk to them to plan this and get it going, but right now there's an issue with where that dredge material will be moved to. During environmental testing, it wasn't suitable for open water disposal, and the Army Corps is looking at other options, one of which could potentially be a CAD cell or confined aquatic disposal. And they are working right now, the Army Corps of Engineers, the EPA, and the DEP, on designating potential CAD cells, because we're not the only community that needs those. There's dredge planning going on for New Haven Harbor, for Bridgeport and Black Rock Harbor, and they're all in similar positions. So we're hoping that within the next couple years, the Army Corps will have a plan to complete that dredging. Where the federal channel ends and the marina begins is our responsibility. It's outside of the federal channel. The last time it was dredged was in 2013. And it has started to shoal back in again, and we're getting ready now to start the permitting process to get ahead of it, knowing that we need to dredge that. As far as funding for that goes, we've been working hard to build up the Harbor Management Fund and put as much money as we can away for capital projects such as dredging and dock replacement. And then we would also look to grant funding also. The Connecticut Port Authority just issued another round of small harbor improvement grants, and as they continually do, and that would be something that would be eligible for grant funding like that.
Excellent. Thank you, Director Dunnigan, and through you, Mr. Chairman. It's just the work that you do and that the Harbor Commission does is a big reason why Milford is so desirable, so thank you.
Thank you.
Any more questions for the Harbor Commission? Alderman Healy.
Thank you, Director Donegan. Just a quick note. So if we still have a small portion, 70, 80%, has been done on the federal part of the channel, itself. And from your perspective, looking at it, 2013, we're getting some silt and so on the city side where the marina is responsibility. I'm going to assume you'd look to possibly try and coordinate that activity so that if there is a vendor that's utilized, we might be able to avail ourselves, of that.
It is possible. With any federal construction project, there are a lot of rules and contingencies involved, and it doesn't. Also with disposal areas, depending upon every dredge project requires extensive sediment testing and analysis, and that dictates where the material can be moved to. In Long Island Sound, there's 3 different possible disposal areas that are open water disposal. And then if it's not suitable for open water, it either needs to go into a confined cell or a capped cell, or potentially even upland. So those factors come into play also, but certainly we would look for any sort of combining or benefit that we could.
Okay. And on your fees, so the fees that you're collecting, and you mentioned an increase of 5% in terms of, rentals, so that's 76 fund account that you have. Do you know what the current balance is for that fund for fees?
It is, well, so there's two funds, and the total of those two funds that the Harbor Management Commission has is just over 800,000 this month.
800,000?
Yes.
Okay. And would you be able to use some of those funds for the heating circulation system, going forward? You would be able to?
Yes.
Okay. And just on a positive note, I have availed myself, family, I have family that has brought transient boat, to Milford, and it is an outstanding service. The marina is terrific, and it provides those of us that have children who live away but bring the boats up, and I thank you and compliment your staff and the organization. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any more questions for the Harbor Management and Marina? I guess you answered all our questions. Thank you for coming out tonight, and thank you for what you're doing in that harbor. Next department on our agenda is the Borough of Woodmont, page 88. Warden Ed Benessi will do the presenting.
I'll tell you how old I am. I was on the Harbor Commission 45 years ago when the whole head of harbor project was an idea in Alan Berrien's head, and some paperwork that people were trying to put together. And honest to God, I said, I wonder if this is ever really going to happen, and what a great job they did. There are a few new faces I see here in front of me. I'm Ed Bonessi, the warden in the Borough of Woodmont. I do this same shtick for many years. I thought this year was going to be my last, but certain situations have occurred that they're not allowing me to leave. But the Borough of Woodmont, to the surprise of many people, is an actual separate municipality within the confines of the city of Milford. For those of you who do not know, I am basically the glorified assistant to Chris Saley. I handle all of the public works on the 6 miles of roadway and about a mile of coastline in that area. I gave you a little sheet with our BR1 as well as a history of what we have, what we perform. Basically, we do everything that Public Works would do on that side of town, and we've been doing it for $265,000 a year. The city can't do it for that amount, and it's because I have no employees. Okay, I get paid $1 a year, and it's not out of this budget, it's out of a separate assessment that the borough puts on, which is, I think, 0.85 mils, which pays my salary. We have a bookkeeper, tax collector, our borough hall, and clerk, and the extra police services that we provide during the summer. When I say public beaches, it's not just the fact that the beaches are there, but we have a very unique situation there. There used to be 3 Category G beaches in the city of Milford over number of years ago these occurred. The one in Woodmont runs 1,500 feet between Clinton Street and Bonsaline Street. It was established by the city of Milford, then Mayor Fred Lissman. I believe it was John Casey was the city engineer at the time, and they made this arrangement with Army Corps of Engineers and Department, DEP at the time. And there is a 67-page maintenance agreement that the city signed on to. And the city signed on to that for all three of these Category G beaches. The one in Woodmont is the only one that we have maintained, and we've done it initially all on our own dime, and but then since then Mayor Blake stepped up to the plate and agreed to provide the engineering services which are required to send the elevations to these 8 cell levels every 6 months, in May and in November. We've also done some innovative ways to help provide historical data and with aerial photographs now, which are much less expensive than they have been in previous years. We also do certain types of beach grading that helps give us credit toward the maintenance of the beach. And as long as we maintain that 50-foot berm, and every few years we spend about $150,000 on renourishment, and Army Corps stays satisfied when there is a disaster declaration, Army Corps or FEMA has come in my time on the board, there were 3 different occasions where they came in and basically brought the beach back up to where it was in 1993 when the original agreement came. It's a 50-year agreement, so we have just a few years left, and it behooves us to maintain that, and as long as I'm around, we will maintain it. It is very tedious and somewhat expensive, and we're hoping that once this 50 years runs out, we'll be able to get some sort of a renewal. You see basically my main contractor is Jim Malico. He is by far, he's just a jewel. I don't know what we're going to do when he decides to finally pack it in, but I'm trying to work with him to help us make a smooth transition somewhere down the road. We were asking for, I believe it was 308. I met with the mayor and Peter, and I'm in total satisfied agreement if I get the 285. I appreciate it. This would have been our 4th year without an increase had we not gotten that, but we will be able to get through to next year with that amount, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Anyone have any questions for the Borough of Woodmont? I see no questions for you.
I appreciate everything you guys do. I know I get paid a lot more money than you do with my $1 salary. Thank you.
The next department on our agenda is the Recreation Department, Director Bill Garfield. That's page 82.
Thank you all for being here. The Recreation Department continues to grow. We're adding programs and filling them faster than we ever have. Our leagues are growing. Our permits, we're permitting more space than ever before. We're really just getting bigger and bigger, which is a great thing. Our budget, we've got 3 requested increases, and I just quickly just want to thank the mayor and Peter and Holly for working with me. Coming out of COVID, we kind of fell behind budget-wise, and it's taken about a few years to catch ourselves back up, and this is about as potentially as good as we're ever going to have it. So I appreciate that work and believing in us and all we do. So thank you. And I'm here to answer anything.
Alderman Smith III.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and through you. And good evening, Director Garfield. Thank you for being here tonight. There was a time when this whole room was filled up with pickleballers for certain issues with reserving courts and everything else. Seeing none here tonight, I assume that it's been very smooth at the rec department. And my question is that because have we expanded the courts? Has there been another system that's been implemented that has worked out some of the reservation issues for certain courts?
Candy. I've given them all candy.
Okay.
No, we've worked with them, and I think we're in a really good place. We have a new online system that allows people to reserve courts. The pickleball club that we have during the days, I think that's grown to near max capacity, and it's just running really well. We've actually now hired somebody that's down there and kind of facilitates it. It's helped with some of the internal problems we've had, and I just think everybody's kind of settled in, to be honest.
Excellent. Thank you, Director. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any more questions? Alderman Pacelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the Director. Can you just comment a bit on the growth? You mentioned the participation in the activities are exploding.
It's phenomenal what has been going on. I mean, people, we all were excited to get out of COVID, and it's just really spiked from there. The pickleball community is, one of the largest we have. Our community gardens is at 100% with a wait list. Our Learn to Swim, we've more or less tripled the amount of classes we have over the course of a year, and they're full. I know you're familiar with Hoops by the Harbor, things like that. Our basketball it's never been this big. Basketball is about 11 months out of the year now, nonstop. Our clinics are all full. It's great to see. Kids are participating, adults are participating. It's across the board. Everything we're doing is just constant. Our playground programs, Camp Happiness is another one. We had record attendance there. It's really just, it's across the board.
Great. And then with this budget request and what has been recommended, you feel comfortable being able to provide the services needed to fulfill all of that growth?
Yeah, better than ever before.
That's great. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Alderman Healy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, to Director Garfield. Again, with the success of the programs that you're having, currently, back on the fee side of this, what do you have in your 76 fund account for fees that it's $25 for residents of Milford, it's $100 for outside residents who join the Pickleball Association and utilize those facilities, and then if you could comment on a natatorium, also, and where we are with funding and maintenance and the upkeep and how that operationally is working out.
Yep. It's been fantastic, to sum it up in a word. We worked with Public Works, came up with a rough number. It's about $150,000 a year to maintain the pool. And I believe before we went through everything we went through, we were probably less than a third of that in revenue. Now we are over 100,000 in revenue, and we've closed that gap, and we've turned around and put.
So you're on the positive side?
Not on the positive yet. We're close, and we've put a lot of money back into the pool. We redid the office, we redid the decks, we put in new lane lines, new flags and banners for everyone, a message board in there. Public Works has put in a lot of time and energy and hard work. So the pool
That's certainly a compliment to you and Public Works, because as Alderman Smith had mentioned about the pickleball folks that were here, in months past to talk about how the program was run and so on, we had this room full with people who were deeply concerned about the operational aspects and the cancellation of that program. So I'm heartened, to hear that things are going very well. I've heard that through the grapevine also. I'm glad to hear that. And additionally, what do you have in your fund account, the 76 fund account, from bringing in the fees currently?
It varies depending on projects, depending on what I pay for. I just actually took a portion of money out to cover our seasonal temp. I would say now it's at about maybe 800.
Okay. Well, that's similar to the Harbor Commission, who had about 800. Your budget request and then what was approved by the mayor and the Board of Finance is a differential from what you requested of minus 32K. So with that fund balance that you have and the positive aspects of what you're talking about, you're certainly going to be able to meet all your contractual obligations and fulfill the services that your department offers?
Yeah, the account is there, and it's a roller coaster, probably a nightmare for Peter, because we do so much, and we bring in so many different things, vendors, the trips. We've actually, one exciting thing is we brought in bigger trips for the summer playground program. About 15 years ago, we used to take like compounds trips, things like that. We had to get away from that. We're going back to that. So we're bringing in bigger things, giving more to the kids and a better experience. So it's up and down.
How many city, part-time employees during these summer months when all the programs are running do you employ youth from?
We had over 125 last year, with about 90% plus from Milford. So we try hard to hire within our city. We've given a lot of high school kids their first job for sure.
Which is great.
Yeah.
Do you coordinate it all with the Boys and Girls Club up on Wheeler's Farm?
Hiring wise or camp
Yeah, for
wise?
opportunities for youth.
A little bit. We've shared some names. We've gone back. Megan and I have a good relationship. We've also worked with Megan to let her know we had a summer playground program site at West Shore, and they were right next door. So we've pulled out of there for now. They're going to run that location, and we're going to stick to the other side, which is just, again, open communication and not competing against one another.
Okay. I participate and I'm a member of the Milford Pickleball Association.
Yes.
I go to Eisenhower Park, and since the changes that you have made, it runs very efficiently, very smoothly. The folks that you do employ there are very customer friendly. So I obviously compliment you on that. And I also want to compliment you that you've provided an opportunity for an annual pickleball tournament that's been done there, and that's with Kingsview Partners, and they have run an annual tournament in conjunction with you, and we've garnered funds for Camp Happiness, thousands of dollars, and this year it's going to be on again, and it's going to go to the Bethel Center, which obviously services our community and the greater community for people in need. So thank you, and that's a great organization to work with, because we're sharing those funds. So thank you.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Any more questions? Alderman Fowler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, thank you, Director Garfield, for being here and for all the good work you're doing. I actually have a question regarding the natatorium, because the program participation between residents versus non-residents. And these are the few complaints or questions that I have gotten, so I thought since you're here, I might as well ask them. The natatorium, I see that open adult swim is through September to June, ends around 1 p.m. I'm thinking for Milford to be accommodating to professional adults who might be working between those hours. Is there an opportunity to have the pool open later for open swim?
I could certainly look at it. I know right now that pool is used 7 days a week, a lot. We've got the Aqua Jets, the Rapid Swim Club. We have all of our programs, Learn to Swim. We have the Special Olympics. We have, the list goes on, and we are there sometimes upwards until 9 o'clock at night, which is kind of unheard of in the world of pools, I'm told. And I know there's a afternoon kind of carve out time for Public Works to go in there, clean things, vacuum the pool when needed, things like that. So I can look into that and find out and talk to the guys in the office about that.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And one other question related to the residents versus non-residents. So when, let's just say for, I don't know, like softball or basketball programs that we have, do Milford taxpayers, residents have, I guess when they sign up, is there preferential treatment to them, to non-residents, or is it first come, first serve? Just tell me a little bit about the application process to signing up teams and so on.
So it depends. So team sports, there's a team fee, and some allow for non-residents, some don't allow for non-residents. So it's a little gray there. Individual sign-ups, yes, there's a non-resident fee added to the registration fee that Milford residents won't obviously have to deal with.
All right, thank you.
Any more questions for the Recreation Department? Seeing none, I think that's it.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you for coming out tonight and answering all our questions. The next department on our agenda is the Mayor's Office. Page 17. Mayor Richard Smith.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. I would ask that you might indulge me, that I could stay here, and since I have a live mic. Listen, you guys all know, you've all been in the mayor's office. It continues to be an incredible hub of activity, and it serves really as a front door in many ways to our city. We deal with department heads, spend a lot of time here, civic leaders, business leaders, constituents, prospective business people interested in coming to Milford. On any given day and throughout the winter, we spent countless hours planning for snowstorms and tracking progress on snowstorms, bringing together, as I have since our land use director was hired, stakeholders to say, how are we going to reposition Milford in a new economic era? In creating collaborative work groups. There's so much activity and so much energy, and those of you who have been over, who come into the office, and all of you have, you know what I'm talking about. We have a efficiency committee running out of the mayor's office where folks from across departments are coming together to find cost reduction and efficiency opportunities and collaboration tools. We are now publishing a newsletter out of the mayor's office. So much going on every day. And it's a welcoming place for constituents and people coming in. Invariably, people come here thinking they're looking for the city clerk's office. And I usually take the opportunity to guide them out, walk them out and point to the door. I mean, today was no exception. I probably had 2 people that I guided out. So it's really a great office, and I'm very proud of the folks that work there for creating that atmosphere, that environment that you all feel. And I'm happy to report that we will continue to do that work with a flat budget. We are keeping it flat with the only exception, the one union person that we have that had a slight pay increase. But otherwise, you'll note that we just rolled over last year's budget, so there's no request for additional funds. Be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for the mayor's office? Alderman Smith III.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and through you to the mayor. Good evening, Mr. Mayor. This will surprise you. I only have 2 questions. The staffing level in your office, what's the current staffing level? Are there any vacancies in there? Is it fully staffed? Are there any temporary persons that you have coming in and assisting the office at all?
No, we're fully staffed. Sarah was hired maybe October. I think the former administration did have a seasonal temp, but that position's been filled. And Emma was there when I was here last time, and 23 is still there. We will have a couple of high school interns, but fortunately they work inexpensively. So we look forward to them joining us in a couple weeks.
Excellent, thank you for that. Through you, Mr. Chairman, during the Board of Finance deliberations, they had talked about, and I don't want to, not looking past through here, but as you probably, you're not going to be here forever. They had talked about the salary of the mayor being too low, and it could potentially discourage future candidates to run for mayor. So my question for you would just be, do you support a mayor's salary increase? Would you look to do something like that in the future? I mean, when we look at the budget, the chief of staff salary is higher than the mayor's, which will surprise some people, right?
I know, I was going to fire her and divvy that up for the other people in the office.
I'll save some money.
I'll save some money. You know, the history of this goes all the way back to Mayor Listman, who turned down raises. And Fred's frequent reply was, you don't do this for the money, you do it for the love of the city. He could obviously afford to do it. So it's never been dearly compensated. But I will leave the decision about the mayor's salary up to greater minds than my own, including this board. I do think, as you said, I won't be here forever. I think it's probably something you want to look at. There's a couple things that would make this job more attractive. But I'm doing it. I took a huge pay cut to come here for my last job, and I'm doing it because I love the city, and I feel like there's a lot of work to do, so I obviously don't do it for the money.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any more questions for the mayor's office? I think that's it. Did a great job, Mr. Mayor. Next department head is the general expenses, page 19. taken care of that, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, those all remain flat.
So is there any questions for the general expenses? Alderman Smith III.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, does the general expense section include any contingency or reserve funds?
No, these are all, in fact, I was saying to Peter, I don't know how they all get categorized on this page, because some of them are Public Works, some of them are our Finance Department, so I'm not really sure how they all join together on this page, but no, there's no contingency money built in here. Peter, do you want to add anything to that?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to Alderman Smith, no, there is no technical contingency fund on this page. And just to add to the mayor's comments, the reason they're all together in one page is that they relate to the entire city as a whole. And a good portion of the transactions that have to be processed for the various expenditures get processed either through the mayor's office or through the finance office, so that is why they're together under general expenses. Thank you.
Thank you, Finance Director RDC. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions pertaining to general expenses? Yes, Alderman Fowler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, this is maybe the smallest line item I'll ask a question on, but it's the 400th celebration for $1,000. What's that $1,000 going toward?
It's an accumulative account that we are putting $1,000 a year in to have money for the 400th anniversary, so we're thinking ahead.
All right, just curious. Thank you.
Alderman Smith III.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, I hate to belabor a $1,000 line item, but is that this is the first year that that's starting, or this was planned previously and it's been going on for several years? And if so, how much is in that fund?
I don't know the balance, but it's been going on for decades. Do you know what the balance is?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, Alderman Smith, it's a little over 30,000, so we've been budgeting this $1,000 for about 30 years. Thank you.
Wow, thank you for that. And do you expect to use all of those funds this year?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, we have not used the funds yet. This is an annual contribution to a reserve fund for the 400th celebration itself when it occurs. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And through you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate that. I was just wondering if we had planned on using all of the funds in that account for the 400th celebration.
The 250th this year, you mean?
Yeah.
I don't know, what year is the 400th? I'm not even sure, but it's not this year.
But the 250th.
No, this is a different, this is 400th anniversary of Milford, as opposed to the 250th of the United States, which we're celebrating this year.
And when is what year would that
be? What year are we, 400?
2039.
Yeah. I'd have to break up my calendar.
And the city plans on putting...
A hell of a party together.
I can see that. I'm excited. No, but is the $1,000, is that just going to continue, or is there a plan to increase that amount and scale up as we approach?
There hasn't been any such discussion. This is, as I mentioned earlier, been going on for decades. No need or no discussion that I've been involved in to say we should increase it. So no.
Excellent. Thank you.
Any more questions pertaining to general expenses? Seeing none, move on to the Law Department, page 24, City Attorney John Bertram.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the Board of Aldermen. The budget is flat again this year. The only changes are the wage adjustments, so if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Any questions for the law department? I don't see any, John.
I did misspeak. There was one change. The dollar remains the same, but in the duplicating costs and office supplies changed. Duplicating costs was historically $1,500, and office supplies was $1,000. We took $500 from duplicating, put in office supplies because of the increased cost of paper.
Alderman Healy.
Thank you. Just a quick comment from you to City Attorney Burcham. We just want to, as a board member, I want to thank you and your department for being available, to answer any questions. Your staff has been very accommodating on multiple different issues that are important to us. So I want to thank you and compliment your staff relative to contracts that have been settled and dealing with disputes relative to labor or dealing with civil-related matters on adjustments relative to tax matters. So thank you very much.
Much appreciated, and I will let them know.
Any other questions for the law department? Seeing none, thank you, John.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Next item is the public debt service. Is there any questions for the public debt service? I don't see any. Moving on, the employees' benefit. Employee benefits, page 84. Is there any questions for the employee benefits? I don't see any. Moving on to the next item, insurance and bonds, page 83, 85. Any questions pertaining to insurance and bonds? Seeing none, we'll move on to claims and refunds, page 85. Any questions pertaining to claims and refunds? Nope. We'll move on to benefit and salary reserve, page 86. Any questions pertaining to benefit and salary reserve? Alderman Smith III.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and through you. I do see that for the benefit and salary reserve, the department had requested $1.3 million. The mayor had recommended just over $1.3 million, and the Board of Finance recommended just over $1.5 million. Why the increase? Was there something that had happened in between the department request and the mayor's recommendation and when the Board of Finance recommended the budget to the Board of Aldermen? And if so, what was that?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to Alderman Smith, what occurred at that during the Board of Finance discussions were recent developments regarding the Milford Employee Association, the MEA contract that was in negotiations, was approaching a tentative agreement. And so I received wage information regarding those negotiations, that new contract from Human Resources and the City Attorney's Office, and discussed it with the Board of Finance, and that's what led to the increase to prepare for that contract settlement. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Any more questions for the benefit and salary reserve? Seeing none, we'll move on to private school textbook, page 93. Any questions pertaining to private school textbook? I don't see any. Moving on to education audit fees, page 93. Any questions pertaining to education audit fees? I see none. We'll move on to school debt, page 93. Any questions pertaining to school debt? I don't see any. We'll move on to employees' benefits, non-teaching, page 93. Any questions pertaining to employee benefits, non-teaching? I see none. We'll move on to the last subject for tonight's meeting, education, health insurance contribution, page 94. Is there any questions pertaining to health insurance contribution, page 94? Alderman Smith III.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and through you. I think it's the same type of question that I just had. Obviously, the department requests, mayor recommendations match, and then there's a difference by about $700,000, give or take a few thousand, for the Board of Finance recommendation to this board. Why that change?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to Alderman Smith, the reason for that change was we received results of negotiations with Anthem, and they were able to revise the rate for the stop-loss premium coverage. They previously had given us an increase, but they agreed to leaving it flat, so that led to the city being able to reduce that amount. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Peter. And through you, Mr. Chairman, is that going to be a one-time benefit for the city? Did they agree to renew that next year? They'll revisit it again anew next year? What's the plan for that? Because if that's a decrease, right, of $700,000, you know, the concern would be you come back next year and they hit you with $1 million, right? So what's the plan for that? And it sounds like they weren't, or tell me if they were receptive to a multi-year type of reduction or keeping it where it is.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, Alderman Smith, they were not receptive to a multi-year reduction. It's looked at each year, and the claims experience obviously is looked at as well. And we were fortunate that last year we had a rate hold as well. They traditionally come in with an increase because of the high claim cost experience, and usually that increase could range anywhere from 15 to 25%. And so I give credit to our health insurance consultant. They worked with us to look at all the data and negotiate with Anthem, and fortunately we had a rate hold, I believe, last year and again this year. And we will always try for a rate hold or reduction each and every year when we conduct the negotiations with Anthem. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions for the education health insurance contribution? Hearing none, at this time I'll entertain a motion to recess until Wednesday, April 22nd, 2026 at 7 p.m. Motion has been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We're in recess. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Madam Secretary.